Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Jordi Mullor. I'm Director of Marketing at Lexington Wealth Management. So thank you all for taking the time today. I know everybody's probably going through webinars on a daily basis or Zoom calls, so really appreciate you taking the time. We're gonna get through some instructions of what we're gonna kind of like be experiencing today, but I have to do just a couple of like housekeeping items before we start. The first one is make sure today, more than any other webinar, that you have a good sound system or a good hearing kind of like equipment in your house for this particular webinar. We'll definitely get into some of that later in the workshop. I also would highly recommend that you let other people know that you are in this webinar so that you don't get interrupted and you get to fully experience it later. The last thing regarding like the setup that I would like to say is this is going to be a workshop. That means you're going to have to push yourself today. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be not just a listening webinar. It's going to be a practicing webinar. And part of that involves you pushing your challenge yourself and pushing your limits a little more than what you are used to in a Zoom. So just with that, I'm going to start presenting the speaker today. William Trubridge is a 15 world record champion in free diving. I sent a bio to all of you before. You all probably saw it before registering. But the one thing I have to say about him is, now that I've been probably interacting with him more than anybody in this webinar, is that he's a guy that really pushes himself on a daily basis. And I would say through COVID, we have all been feeling a little uncomfortable on how we deal and interact with each other, how we interact with the world, how we interact with our families, how we interact with our businesses. And this could not be a more timely topic and a more timely speaker for us to have today than William. William currently is in the Bahamas, so if you see something regarding internet or some kind of like connection, like probably losing for a little bit, please forgive him. He's training right now in the Bahamas. So I just wanted to say that. The event today is not an accident. We at Lexington Wealth Management do put a lot of effort on bringing value to things that are just outside financial planning, outside wealth management, or as part of a comprehensive wellness and wealth. So this is just another example. William was the speaker at the Earth Day event that we were hosting this April 11 and got canceled through COVID. But he graciously agreed to do this webinar for us today. So we're really looking forward to it. And to start the webinar today and to set the table, we wanted to play a video of a record attempt that William did back in, I think it was 2016, William? 2016, where he crossed his previous record of 100 meters and he broke it to 102 meters. And I was reminded earlier today to remind how much that is in feet. So that is 334 feet, which is the record in free diving at the time in 2016. So please sit on your seats, enjoy this video. And after the video, William will join us to start the workshop.
3, 2, 1. Official dock. +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +10. William Trubridge, New Zealand, 102 meters, constant weight, no fins, world record attempt. 30. 40 meters. 50 meters. 60 meters. 70. 80. 85 meters. 90 meters. 90 meters. 80 meters. 70 meters. 60 meters. 50 meters. 30 meters. 20. 20. Signal. Say it.
Oh, we get it.
Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Yeah. Stay up. Stay up. Keep breathing.
I don't know. Every time I watch the video, I have to take a deep breath. Last thing is we will have different sections on this webinar today, and but Will, take it away. It's a pleasure to have you, and welcome.
Thank you, Jordi. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for everyone to have me speaking here today. It's a pleasure to meet you, at least virtually. Yeah, I'd like to start by just asking everyone, like, how are you? It's not a completely rhetorical question. If you can just take a moment, I guess, to check in with yourself and notice what your your physical status, like what your energy levels are, and also kind of mentally, are you stressed out? Are you like, what is your mental energy at the moment as well? And we'll come back to that later in the webinar. Yeah, I think we're just going to dive in straight in from there. So the first thing that I'd like to ask you to do is to visualize two different scenarios. And the first one is one that maybe is common to us all, our experience. We've all at some point as kids normally been on the starting line of a 100-meter sprint race. And if you can just remember what that was like, the kind of the physical state of it, as well as the thoughts that were going through your mind, and remember how the adrenaline and that kind of elevated, excited state meant that your heart is racing at 100 something beats per minute. Your thoughts are racing as well. So your whole kind of organism is in an accelerated state and waiting for that moment when the gun goes off. So everything is kind of tuned in for that. And that state, physical and mental state, is completely in alignment with what you want to achieve, right? Because it makes sense for you to have a fight or flight reflex when you're faced with that kind of a scenario of wanting to run as fast as you can to the other end of the finish line. Now I'd like you to visualize a different scenario, which is what you just saw in the video, where I'm lying on the surface of the water, or you're lying on the surface of the water, and you're about to attempt a dive to 100 meters depth. So you might expect, and you'd be right, that your organism responds, that kind of instinctive response is similar to how it is for a sprint. Everything is elevated. Your heart rate is still going very fast. Your thoughts are flying, and it's all the wrong kind of thoughts, normally negative thoughts. And in this case, everything is completely misaligned, or like completely counterproductive to what you want to achieve. Because as you can probably imagine, you have to be able to relax completely in order to be able to dive deeply and conserve the oxygen in your body. So relaxing not just the body, but also the mind as well. And so that elevated state, the fight or flight reflex, the adrenaline, cortisol, those stress hormones, they are completely oppositely aligned to what you want to achieve. And freediving is kind of unique amongst sports for this characteristic, because in most sports you can channel that intense energy, the kind of the nervous energy, you can channel that into performance, but not so in freediving. In freediving, it's counterproductive. And everything that I'm doing, probably that one of the hardest parts of the dive is that moment before the first breath, the last breath, when I'm trying to tune everything out, stay present and focused in the present moment, and keep everything relaxed and focus on my breathing. And the reason I bring this up is because in our day-to-day lives, whether it be in business or in personal life and relationships, we face a plethora of challenges day to day. And I posit that those challenges are more similar to a free dive in this aspect than they are to a sprint. By that I mean, if you respond in the same way with an elevated adrenaline, cortisol, the fight or flight reflex, in those scenarios, in those situations, then it's counterproductive to solving those situations or to navigating your way through them. And so in these situations, we need to avoid that fight or flight reflex. We have to, similarly to the free dive, we have to be able to relax completely. And 10 years ago, before the video that you saw, I tried to become the first person to free dive to a depth of 100 meters in no fins. And it was one of the biggest challenges of my career because of that kind of momentous milestone depth, but there was also numerous other challenges that were around that particular dive. And in order to be successful, I had to quell that stress response, the fight or flight reflex, all the stress hormones. And I had to be completely in control over the body and the mind. And it's kind of like a test tube, a test tube experiment in controlling your body and your mind to the absolute utmost, in order to be able to extract as much distance out of those oxygen molecules you contain in your body as possible. So whereas a free dive is kind of like this intense 4 minutes of like a test tube experiment in controlling body and mind, in our day-to-day lives, we have these much more protracted, longer versions of essentially the same thing. So if you have a lengthy divorce, or a business project that's kind of gone awry, or some other kind of challenge in your professional or your personal life, these are challenges that play out over the course of days, weeks, months, or even longer. But they involve the same kind of situation and require the same kind of a response. Because if you allow yourself to become kind of in that elevated fight or flight or panicky reflex in those situations, then it's, again, counterproductive. If it happens to me during a free dive, then if it happens to me during a free dive, then I, best case scenario, I'll turn early. So I will kind of feel that something's not right, and I'll bail on the dive. But if I push it and continue on, then I can black out as I'm on my way up and have to be rescued by my safety divers. So in the challenges we face in our day-to-day lives, if we don't manage that stress as well, then a similar kind of thing can happen. You can burn out in your professional life, and so you're no longer productive, simply because you have kind of succumbed to that counterproductive stress response. So that's basically what I'm going to address today, is ways to maintain your composure when you're faced with those difficulties. And the reason why this is called today Smiling into the Abyss is because it's about kind of maintaining that composure. The word I often use is equanimity. So staying kind of peaceful, serene mentally and physically when you are faced with an adverse situation. And equanimity is a good word because it denotes not just that inner kind of sense of peace and serenity, but the fact that you're still present and involved. You're not kind of, it's not the case that you're just detaching yourself completely, so you're like meditating and completely oblivious to what's going around you, because there's no way to solve the situation if you're in that kind of state. You have to be still present enough in order to be involved and solve the situation, but maintaining your composure at the same time. So it's about responding instead of reacting. And it's important to kind of make a distinction here that there's two parts to any of these challenges, or to use the analogy of the word abyss, there's two parts to how we deal with that. And I liken it to being kind of, if you're a castaway on a desert island like Tom Hanks in the movie, there's two things that you have to do in order to the two things you have to do is to survive and to get off the island, right? And you have to do it in that particular order, because if you try and build a raft on day one, when you haven't found food or water or shelter, then you're either going to build a pretty shitty raft and not get too far, or you're going to die of hunger or thirst. So you have to obviously find a way to survive in that situation before you work on extracting yourself from it, or escaping from it, or solving the situation. And in the same way, in the challenges we face, we have to first be able to reside in those challenges and maintain our kind of our composure, equanimity. And then only when we are in that state can we accurately and efficiently devise the kind of plan or solution that's needed in order to extract yourself or solve that challenge. So there's kind of an A and a B, and the B is something that's not part of my expertise, and it's very highly specific. So if it's a divorce, then you use very different kind of solutions to how you would solve a problem in business or elsewhere. But the A part, the maintaining your composure, your equanimity in those situations, that is something which through freediving I've had a lot of opportunity to practice and to work out techniques for. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is how you can look into the abyss and stay smiling, serene, and confident of that challenge. So the first step in order to achieve that is to actually identify, in this case, what the adversary is. And it's not the particular challenge itself, it's your reaction to that challenge. So if it's in the case of, I don't know, an argument with an employee or with a spouse, then it's the adversary here is not your spouse, it's the reactions mentally and emotionally that you are having, which are clouding the situation and which are kickstarting your stress response and creating all the problems. And so that's what we need to address. And there's kind of like a feedback loop as part of that response, whereby we have these kind of negative thoughts or negative emotions, and they release, they cause the body to release stress hormones, which escalate the heart rate and cause you to think faster, to react kind of in a more elevated state. So you have more of these negative thoughts. And so there's this vicious feedback loop that sends you into a kind of a death spiral. I remember a particular dive, I think it was a world championship event, when just as I was taking that last breath, so I was breathing in to fill my lungs, about to go down, and this little voice, as it sometimes does, piped up in my head and said, "This is the last breath you're going to take." And there's nothing, I can't kind of stop and start again 10 minutes later, because we only have one chance for this dive. So there's nothing I can do but to continue and try and deal with that kind of mental thought and everything that arises from it. So if I let myself kind of respond to it and think, well, why is that? What's going on? And kind of get sucked into that negative feedback loop, then I would have gone down into this kind of death spiral that I talked about. So instead, when we're faced with that feedback loop, we need kind of like a double-pronged approach in order to counter it, both on the mental level and on the physical level. And the two prongs that I'll talk about today are breathing, a particular type of breathing for the physical level, and noticing or mindfulness for the mental level. And I'll give you kind of my particular spin or take on these two aspects, and how they can be used in order to interrupt that negative feedback loop and actually potentially take you into an upward spiral of kind of building positivity instead. And so to talk briefly about the breathing aspect, the breath that we will use when we're doing a particular exercise today, and the most efficient way of breathing and the most calming way of breathing is what's called the diaphragmatic passive breath. So the diaphragm is this plate of muscle that separates your royal organs, the heart and the lungs, from the kind of messy stomach, liver, kidneys underneath. And it acts like a plunger. So when it moves down, it pulls air into the lungs. And that's why it's sometimes called belly breathing, because when it pushes down, it also pushes the belly outwards. It's the most efficient way of breathing because we don't have to expand this semi-rigid container above, and also because the lungs contain most of their volume, they're pyramidal in shape. So most of their volume is in the base of the lungs. So by breathing with the diaphragm, we actually suck more air into the more voluminous portion of the lungs. And in a lot of kind of Asian martial arts and philosophies, there's this area between your navel and your base is called the tendon, I think, in Japanese Zen practice, and it's kind of the seat of power in your body. So by breathing into this part of the body, it charges your batteries essentially. It's part of that philosophy. But there has definitely been scientific, a lot of scientific studies about the different styles of breathing that have proven now pretty empirically that diaphragmatic breathing is the most relaxing on the parasympathetic nervous system. So it actually counters that, the fight or flight reflex, the stress response, and the pathways between this type of breathing and the parts of your brain that manage those stress responses have also been distinguished as well. So diaphragmatic breathing is the style of breathing that we use in preparation for a record attempt in freediving. It's the style of breathing we use when we're asleep, when we're most relaxed. If you watch a baby, especially asleep, you'll only see their tummy moving up and down. But when we're panicking and when we're stressed, we resort to breathing with the upper part of the lungs, this kind of nervous style of breathing where the shoulders are moving, very inefficient, and it gives that a negative feedback whereby you become more stressed out. So simply by putting your attention on your breathing and making sure that you're breathing with the diaphragm, you can vastly change your physical and your mental state. So this is one of the prongs that we use to intercede on that stress response. The second prong, I use the word noticing or mindfulness. This is basically just involves observing how we are not our thoughts, we're not our bodies. We are almost none of the things which we identify with as ourselves. So our memories, the thoughts we're having in this moment, the bodies that we find ourselves in, all of these are not what you are in your essence. When you strip it back down to your bare essence, you are basically just a point of awareness that is experiencing all of these things around you, whether it is your own body or the environment that you find yourself in, all the thoughts that are coming up from other areas of your brain. So again, this has been proven scientifically that the thoughts that arise to our consciousness actually start to happen before we're aware of them. So we're just receiving this information from outside, whether that be kind of the visual information that we are seeing, the audible information, sensory information, or even the information coming from our own bodies and our own minds. And remembering that, noticing that in every moment, if you actually pay attention to the thoughts that you have, you can actually notice very clearly that they're just arising out of your subconscious, out of the ether, wherever you like to see it. But they're not, you're not choosing to have those thoughts in the same way that you're not choosing to see what you're seeing around you. It's all information that's coming in. And this allows us to kind of detach from the association with those negative emotions or negative thoughts that you might have. When you just see them as information that you're receiving, then you won't respond as intensely or as out of control as you otherwise would. So, for example, if I am holding my breath, and this is something that may come in handy with you shortly, if you're holding your breath and you feel an urge to breathe, then you can notice where it's coming from, and tell yourself, okay, this is just information that I'm receiving about the level of certain gases in my system. In this case, it's mostly actually about the level of CO2. It's less about the level of oxygen. You probably still have a pretty high level of oxygen. So it's just your body telling you that CO2 levels are starting to rise a little bit. And when you can see that sensation as the pure information that it is, then it allows you to quell that kind of the response, the reaction that you would otherwise have to it. And in the same way with negative emotions, when you recognize and notice that an emotion of anger or impatience that you are having is coming to you, it's not you that are having it, you are just the awareness that's noticing it, then it allows you to detach from it and to stop that feedback effect from happening. So those are the two kind of parallel approaches that I use in order to combat stress. And it's all well and good for me to kind of go on and talk about it in this way, and you probably have forgotten most of what I've said by the time I finish the sentence. But what will perhaps help you to see the utility more and maybe kind of recognize its worth is if you attempt it yourself in a situation like a test tube situation where you can see any potential benefits that it has. And so the one that we're going to do today is a series of easy breath holds that we're going to do together on this Zoom call. And the idea is that you can experiment with putting into practice both the breathing, so we'll be doing diaphragmatic breathing to begin with, but also the mental practice of just noticing the sensations that you're having and detaching yourself from those. So maintaining your composure, your inner kind of peace and equanimity despite those sensations. And when you think about it, a breath hold is one of the kind of the most, it's often seen as one of the most extremely uncomfortable or difficult things that we might do voluntarily, right? Because you're putting yourself in a situation where if you continue it for long enough, you're compromising, you're basically on track to end your life, right? And that's kind of the feeling of it, but in reality, it's definitely nothing like that. What's actually happening in your body is physiologically, in terms of the the concentrations of gases in your cells, there's nothing that is alarming or dangerous about what you're doing. So in this context where we're holding our breath just dry without being in the water, there is no possible way that you can hold your breath to the point where you would cause yourself damage. The worst possible case would be that you passed out, in which case you just start breathing again and wake up straight away. So I don't want to like scare you with those kind of scenarios, and I know almost for a fact that no one will push themselves that far if it's your first time holding a breath today. But just have in the back of your mind that these sensations that you're going to be experiencing, the rising CO2 and the lowering oxygen, are all within values that are well within your limits. So when you feel that urge to breathe, your oxygen levels, if we were to analyze you with a pulse oximeter, would still be close to 100%. Your CO2 is starting to rise, but there's still nowhere near the kind of values that would be concerning. So the idea is that if you go into this exercise today and use these techniques and see some kind of utility in them, then potentially you can start to employ the same kind of techniques, the breathing, the mindfulness, in the kind of challenges that we have during our day-to-day lives. And that breeds a kind of positive feedback loop, because when you experience success with these kind of challenges and techniques, then it builds your confidence, and so you're then kind of motivated to take on greater challenges, tackle problems that you would kind of put away before, and from there kind of build up even more confidence. And so that's the positive feedback loop that we want to ignite, so to speak. And it's a continuous process. It will work until it doesn't, and then you'll need to kind of go back to redeploying the breathing and just the mindfulness when things kind of get out of control or break down. Then again, remind yourself, make sure that you're breathing in the right way, and remind yourself that everything that you're experiencing is just information that's coming in, and you can choose how you respond to that. So let me just give a little bit of a briefing about this exercise that we're going to do. Basically, I'll take you through a short session of visualization, and during that time, you'll be breathing with your diaphragm. So if you haven't already tried it yet, try just placing one hand on your chest, one hand on your stomach, and breathing in such a way that you your belly, your stomach moves out and in with the inhale and the exhale, but your chest should stay more or less still. So if I just stand up here so you can maybe see. So diaphragmatic breath basically involves breathing into here. Notice how this hand on my chest isn't moving at all, it's just the hand on my belly. This is obviously a pronounced diaphragmatic breath. I'm breathing as much as I can into the belly. And you don't need to breathe that deeply. It can just be a more passive, relaxed breath. But that's to show you how the movement is isolated in the stomach. So I'll do kind of a short visualization while you're breathing with this method. And towards the end of that, your breathing will be reduced. Someone asked if you should be sitting down. And yes, sitting is good as long as you're in a posture where your spine is supported, either kind of sitting with a straight back or leaning back if you want to, but not kind of reclining too far back. Make sure that your feet are flat on the ground if you can. If you can have your knees above your feet, that's even better. So basically a position where your spine is straight and supported in some way. And at the end of that visualization, there'll be kind of a natural cessation of the breath. So you won't inhale, you won't exhale, you'll just be kind of coming to a stop with a volume of air in the lungs that's about like half full. And the sensations, the urge to breathe, will start to build pretty quickly on that first one. So don't be alarmed if almost straight away you start to feel an urge to breathe. But I would like you to try and just maintain for as long as possible. It doesn't have to be too long on the first one. We're not pushing the first one, but just try and focus on and maintain your relaxation physically and mentally. So don't allow yourself to kind of go down that kind of panicky route. Notice the sensations you're having, that urge to breathe, try and determine where it's coming from, what it feels like, give it labels if that helps. But just notice that it's something that's external to your consciousness, to your awareness, that's coming in to you. The best analogy I had I've heard of for consciousness is it's like this room where different things are placed, and you can choose to a certain extent what you place in the room of your consciousness. So in this case, you're going to be getting the sensation, this urge to breathe that's being thrust upon your consciousness. But just notice the distinction between you, the silent witness, the silent observer, and the sensation that's coming in. Then, as I said, that first one may not last very long because you won't have full lungs. But on the second one, we'll have a short relaxation between the first and the second. And on the second one, I'll ask you to actually do a full inhale. And then I'll be timing you, and I'll show you, like I'll hold up my phone with the stopwatch on it so that you can see the time when you stop holding your breath on the second one. And on the second one, the idea is to try and extend into that state a little longer, to maintain that relaxation. And if you can, to even deepen the relaxation as a response to the sensation, the urge to breathe. So the more that you feel the urge to breathe, the more that you try and let go and relax. That's the ultimate goal. And then for the third one, that's when you'll challenge yourself to try and hold your breath as long as you possibly can. Again, you'll have a brief period, a minute or two between these to relax and to breathe again and recharge with oxygen. Good. So let me just go over again the initial conditions. If you're sitting in a way that's comfortable with your spine straight, relax, make sure there's no distractions. I recommend that you close your eyes for as much of this as you're comfortable. And yeah, just for now, just focus on my voice, and I'm going to invite you to picture a scene of a large kind of seascape, a large open ocean with no land in sight. So it's a huge kind of expanse of moving sea, and there's this big swell that's moving through the sea. There's not too much wind, so the surface of the water is fairly calm, but there's just a huge swell that's kind of lumbering across this ocean. And as you picture that, I'd like you to bring your attention also to your breathing and just notice what your breathing is doing in this particular moment. Don't try and alter it for now. Just follow your breath with your mind and notice what's happening with it. And as you're aware of your breath, I'd like you to bring your attention to the movement in your stomach, the gentle rise and fall of your stomach as you inhale and exhale. And try and isolate the breath, that movement, so that it's only happening in your stomach and in your diaphragm. Once you feel like you've isolated it there, then just work on accentuating that movement a little bit so that it's quite a pronounced rise of your belly, or your belly is being pushed outwards as you inhale. And then on the exhale, it's coming back in. And there can be a slight contraction of your abdominal muscles to squeeze out the air as you exhale as well. Now bring your attention or your mind back to the seascape of the ocean with a big swell moving across it. And I want you to bring your breathing into time, into the same time as that swell. So if you imagine yourself floating in the ocean now, and as the swell picks you up in a crest of a big long wave, you inhale deeply into your stomach. And then as you fall back down into the trough between the waves, you're exhaling slowly out of the stomach. So your breathing is perfectly in time with this gentle, tall swell that's passing across the ocean. Now I'd like you to notice how the swell is starting to diminish a little bit. It's starting to drop in height. The waves, the swell is dropping off slowly, bit by bit. And as it does, your breathing also becomes not quite as deep on the inhale, not quite as pronounced on the exhale. So slowly, bit by bit, the ocean is starting to flatten off, and with it, your breathing is becoming more and more passive, more and more shallow. Now the surface of the water is almost not moving at all, just this very gentle, long, shallow swell passing through it. And your breath is just a very passive, subtle movement of the belly out and in, but it's still enough. It's still enough to provide you with the oxygen you need. You're perfectly relaxed. Your body is relaxed. Your mind is empty. Now observe how the ocean is completely flattened off into pristine glass, and with it your breath has completely stopped. So stop breathing now wherever you are. And as the sensations build, when they build, just notice them as information coming into you, and notice your reactions to that information. And those reactions themselves are just in themselves more information. Your only goal is to witness this for a certain time while staying relaxed and comfortable. Good. I haven't been timing you for this first one because the time on the first one isn't so important. If any of you are still holding your breath, you can stop now. And I'm going to give you just over a minute to prepare for the next breath hold. Stay relaxed. Try not to move around. You can breathe deeply if you feel like you need to. Breathe in any way that you feel your body needs to. But once you feel like you've recovered, then take the breath back to that passive diaphragmatic breath, the belly breath. So on the second breath hold, we're going to inhale before we start. And you're going to try and maintain your relaxation for as long as you can. And when you start to feel that urge to breathe, try to even deepen the relaxation as a response to the urge to breathe. So the more you feel the urge to breathe, the more you tell yourself, just let go and relax. So the stronger the stressor, the stronger the adversary, the greater we have to hold on to our inner calm, inner equanimity. So I'll give you a countdown now of just 20 seconds, and as close as you can to 0, try and take in that last full inhale deep into your lungs for your lungs, and then relax and hold your breath. So 20 seconds from now. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale and start. And I'll be holding this stopwatch up to the screen, but feel free to keep your eyes closed and just open them as and when you need. That's good. That's past 2 minutes now. Some of you may still be continuing to hold your breath. If you are, you can stop at this point on this one, and I'll let you extend the next one and challenge yourself for the next one. So I'm going to give you, again, about another 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to recover. So go ahead and breathe in whatever way that you feel you need to do to recover. But again, bring it back to that passive diaphragmatic breath when you feel like you've recovered and you can relax again. So for this third and final breath hold, you're going to try and challenge yourself on this one. So when you feel like you cannot hold your breath a second longer, you have to breathe in, then tell yourself, there's still more in the bank. If we were to actually measure your oxygen saturation at that point, you'd probably find it's still kind of like 80, 90% or maybe higher. So there's still plenty of oxygen in your system. And it's just a case of an elevated level of CO2 and your body giving you that information. So remind yourself of that and try and challenge yourself to hold on when you feel you cannot hold your breath any longer. Maybe tell yourself to count down slowly from 10 to 0, 10, 9, 8. And if you get to 0, count up from 0 to 5, and then back down to 0, and just kind of extend it in this way. Give yourself supplemental, like little challenges to go a little longer if you can. And still kind of don't let yourself, or try not to let yourself lose your relaxation. So while you're challenging yourself, remind yourself, okay, if I'm tensing up, if I'm fidgeting or moving around, that's not going to help in any way. It's going to consume more oxygen. So try and stay centered and relaxed and focused. So I'll give you another 20 seconds before we begin this third and final breath hold. And again, I'll be holding the stopwatch up to the screen. 20 seconds. Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale and begin. Just perform like a mental checklist of your body. Go through your body from your toes all the way up your legs, checking, making sure everything is completely relaxed. Relax your fingers, relax your back, relax your shoulders, and in particular, relax all the little muscles around your neck and your face and your head, your eyelids, relax your mouth, relax your tongue, and try also to relax your mind. And when you feel, if you feel an urge to breathe, when you feel it, then try and match that sensation with an equal level of deepening relaxation. So that's 3 minutes there. There may still be some of you who are continuing to hold your breath, in which case, congratulations. And sorry for interrupting you with my voice now. but well done for whatever performance you managed to achieve. And again, the main goal of this wasn't so much to get any particular time, but more to experience those sensations and to try to implement the techniques that I talked about, where you're detaching yourself from that sensation and seeing it just as the pure information that it is. So even with the most kind of like what feels like life or death sensations, we can still employ that kind of technique. And so if you can do it here with success, then you can definitely do it in the other kind of stresses or adversaries or abysses that we are challenged with in our day-to-day lives. So in the other times that I've done this, we've had kind of like a poll where people have been able to post the time that they thought they might achieve and what they actually achieved. And so we could see kind of graphically the difference between expectations and actual performance. And in that case, it's quite a marked difference. So people performed well beyond their expectations. We weren't able to do that with this webinar, but if anyone is okay with sharing their performance, or they are very happy with their performance and you want to share it in the chat, then please feel free to do so now. And also we're going to open it up to a question and answer session shortly. So I just wanted to conclude talking about this this particular exercise, and yeah, encourage you, if you do have seen, if you have been kind of surprised by the performance or the what you're able to achieve with this, then to remember that you have that same kind of ability to surprise yourself in any challenge, whether it's in your personal life or professional life. There is so much potential in the way that we respond to those. In the same way with this kind of test tube experiment, we can often go beyond what we thought of as our limitations. We can do so in every aspect of life. So good luck to you all with that. And
yeah. No, thank you.
yeah, already with some people are starting to comment with their performance.